Assalamu alaikum dear students and fellows. This is Dr. Mozam Ali Malik and today I'm going to talk about the historical evolution of stylistics. Stylistics is an interdisciplinary field that has been influenced by a number of linguistic and literary movements over the history. So broadly speaking, its historical development can be traced back to ancient Greece, where in fact the study of style in language and literature actually began. However, the modern development of stylistics as a distinct field of study took place in the 20th century. So for my convenience, I have divided my discussion on the historical evolution of stylistics into three lectures. In this first lecture, I would talk about the stylistics and its development, historical development before 20th century. And in the subsequent two lectures, I would discuss the historical development of stylistics during 20th century. So let's begin with our lecture number one. Before 20th century, three major movements contributed to the development of stylistics as a discipline. These movements were rhetorical stylistics, individualistic stylistics, and aesthetic stylistics. In the following slides, I would discuss each one of them in a little bit detail. Rhetorical stylistics. A rhetorical stylist in fact combines principles of rhetoric and stylistics for analyzing and understanding the use of language and literary devices in producing persuasive discourses. It explores how rhetorical strategies and stylistic choices influence the effectiveness and persuasiveness of a text. Its origin can be traced back to the classical school of rhetoric, which regarded style as a part of technique of persuasion, and it generally falls under oratory. This discipline was, in fact, a set of rules and strategies which enable a orator to speak well. Aristotle, the great exponent of rhetorical stylistics, has introduced three persuasive audience appeals, which are logos, pathos, and ethos. These three modes are used to appeal to an audience's reason, emotions, and ethics, respectively. What is logos? Logos refers to the appeal to logic and reason. It involves presenting rational arguments, evidence, and logical reasoning to support or claim a position. Pathos, on the other hand, refers to the appeal to emotions. It involves evoking emotional responses in the audience to influence their attitudes and beliefs. Finally, ethos refers to the appeal to ethics or credibility. It involves establishing speakers or writers' credibility, authority, and trustworthiness to gain audiences' confidence. Other than these three persuasive audience appeals, there are five canons of rhetoric or phases of developing a persuasive speech, which were initially proposed by the scholars of classical Rome. These are invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. By invention, they meant researching, brainstorming, and selecting the most persuasive and relevant content to support the speaker's purpose. Arrangement for them means, something that focuses on organizing the selected content in a logical and coherent structure. Style pertains to the use of language and rhetorical devices to convey the intended message effectively and engage the audience. Memory, obviously, it refers to the skill of memorizing and retaining the key points, arguments of the speech. Delivery finally focuses on the actual presentation of the speech. It encompasses certain elements of paralinguistics like tone, volume, and pacing, and some nonverbal communication is also involved in it. One of the most famous figure of speech, which is generally utilized in rhetorical discourse, is known as syllogism. So what is syllogism? It is a form of reasoning in which a conclusion is drawn from two given or assumed propositions or premises. A common or middle term is present in the two premises but not in the conclusion, which may be invalid. For instance, all dogs are animals. This is our premise number one. All animals have four legs. Premise number two. Therefore, all dogs have four legs. This is the concluding premise. Individualistic stylistics. The idea of individualistic stylistics flourished for the first time in Rome, as we know that the Roman Empire had extensive contact with Greek culture and intellectual traditions. Greek philosophy, literature, art, and science had a profound impact on Roman society and its intellectual development. In individualistic stylistics, there is a revival of Cicero's conception of style as an impression of personality. So it was Cicero who tried to associate the linguistic style with the personality of the person who uses that style. In fact, he developed a partition of styles, and this table shows here that partition. The left side column shows Cicero's three levels of styles, which are high grand style, middle style, and low style. Whereas the right side column, it shows rhetorical purposes of such styles, like to move, to please, to teach. It means that he believed that the grand style is used to move people, to persuade people, to convince people, and generally the people who use that type of style, they are either teachers or preachers, missionaries. So they use that type of language, which is flourished and which has a number of literary figures of speech in it. Secondly, middle style is generally used to please people, please audience, better to say. It is used by playwrights, used by entertainers, used by poets, and then the low style, which is marked by the simplicity of language. It is used by teachers to teach students. Individualistic stylistics is a branch of stylistics that focuses on analyzing and understanding the unique style and linguistic characteristics of individual authors or speakers. It explores how an individual's writing or speaking style reflects their personal traits, beliefs, and experiences. Some key aspects of individual stylistics are authorial voice, idiolect, register, tone, syntactic, and semantic patterns. Aesthetic stylistics. In Renaissance era, Greek philosophical texts were rediscovered, translated, and studied by Renaissance scholars. These scholars borrowed and modified some of the Greek ideas on rhetoric and compared style to flowers, jewels, and embroidery. So before 20th century, other scholars like Samuel Wesley and Pope, they also cherished a similar approach to style in language. For instance, Samuel Wesley considers style in language is something like dress of thought. Pope describes stylistics as the equivalent of true wit, which consists in what oft was thought but never so well expressed. All these definitions or descriptions reflect an artificial and ornamental view of style. Aesthetic stylisticians concentrate their literary efforts on elements such as diction, metaphors, images, and symbols utilized for embellishing the subject matter of a given piece of literary work. That is, great importance is given to the choice and artistic arrangement of words. In this sense, such a practice is seen as aesthetic stylistics as it is ornamental in its approach. It is an extension of the dogma that sees the special use of language as the dress of thought. So, in conclusion, we may say that aesthetic stylistics examines how literary texts evoke aesthetic experiences in readers. It explores the emotional, imaginative, and sensory responses elicited by the language, imagery, and stylistic choices of the text. It also focuses on narrative structures, the use of rhetorical devices, wordplay, irony, etc. Thanks a lot for being with me for this first lecture. I will upload lecture number 2 and 3, in which I intend to discuss the historical evolution of stylistics during 20th century. So be with me for the next lectures as well. Thank you very much.